Hey, Azine, we just are starting here. Well, I thought we would go through just lecture 8 today, and there, she takes these images in these fairy tales, and she makes them. The word abyss means no bottom. There's no base. These this metaphorical aspect here is just bottomless. It's absolutely bottomless, and it's just a constant sense of wonder that I experience when I find new symbolic metaphorical images all the time. Hi, Angelique. We're just absolutely just getting started. I thought we'd just go over these two fairy tales, the Six Swans and the Seven Ravens. Both are the stories. I mean, we read Emma Young's Animus and Anima, and we learned all about the anima as a nature being. Now, the anima as a nature being, and she first appeared as the Swan Maiden. So we're going to learn a little bit more about swan maidens today, but not as swan maidens. They're different. This is the swan as animus, not as anima. So let's just go through the six swans. This widowed king loses his way when he hunts in large wood. He gets lost all the time. And an old woman with a nodding head, which is very important, says that she will show him the way out on condition that he marries his daughter. There's a price to come find your way out of the unconscious. The king agrees, but he has a very bad feeling about the new wife, and therefore he hides his children, 6 boys and 1 girl, from his previous marriage in a lonely castle in the forest where he often visits them in order not to lose his way. He uses a ball of cotton given to him by a wise woman, by which, like the thread of Ariadne, she was helped Theseus escape from the Minotaur. He is able from time to time to get to the castle to see his 7 children. But the inquisitive queen gets suspicious and finds out what he's doing, and after having learned magic arts from her mother, makes some fine silken shirts into each one of them. She sews a charm. And then with the help of that same cotton ball, she follows the king and finds the 6 boys. The girl is out at the moment, but the boys, seeing in the distance someone coming, thinking it's their father, run joyfully to meet him. And she throws the shirts over them. Immediately, they are changed into swans and fly away over the forest. And the next day, the king comes to visit the children, asks the girl where her brothers are. She tells her father how she saw them being changed into swans. The king, fearing that the girl might be bewitched, wants to take her home, but since the girl is afraid of her stepmother, she has to be allowed to spend one more night in the castle. Then she goes to seek her brothers. After a long journey through the woods, she finds a small, miserable hut in which there are 6 little beds. She creeps under one, and just as the sun is setting, the 6 white swans come in and at the window and begin blowing on one another until their swan's down is stripped off like a shirt, and the brothers and sisters meet each other joyfully. But the brothers tell her that it is a robber's hiding place, and if the robbers return and find her, they will murder her. The boys explain that they themselves can only lay aside their swan's feathers for a quarter of an hour each evening. The sister asks how she can redeem them, the animus, and they tell her that for the next 6 years, she must neither speak nor laugh, and during that time, she must sew 6 little shirts from star shirts, and then throw them over the swans. And so the girl resolves to rescue her brother. She leaves the cottage, penetrates further into the wood, collects star flowers, and sits up in a tree and begins to make the shirts. And after she has passed some time there, the king, when hunting one day, finds her and asks who she is. She does not reply, but first throws down her gold necklace and then her girdle, and afterward her rich dress, in an effort to make him desist and go away. But she is so beautiful that the king's heart is touched, and he falls so much in love with her that he takes her home and marries her. And the young king has a wicked mother, and the queen, when she gives birth to a child, the mother-in-law hides it, accuses the queen of having murdered it. This happens 3 times, and the third time, the king is obliged to let his wife be tried. She's condemned to be burned as a witch. But just when the sentence is to be carried out, the time has elapsed, the 6 swans fly over. The girl quickly throws the star shirts she has brought with her over the birds, and the brothers stand up alive. But one shirt has not had time to finish, so that youngest brother keeps a swan's wing instead of a left arm. Now that's very important. We'll find out later. This queen can now tell what has happened. She couldn't speak or laugh for 6 years. The wicked stepmother is condemned to be burned on the scaffold, and the 3 children have been hidden away, returned to the court. Okay, well, that's the 6 swans. Now, the 7 ravens is very similar, and she just wanted to put it in as well. So this man has 7 sons, and when at last a daughter is born, she's so weak, tries to baptize her, gets some water, wants the 6 boys to get water. They just are carousing around. They break the pitcher. So the father is impatient because this girl might die if she's not baptized, before she's baptized, and says the boys are good for nothing youths. And he says, I would that they were all changed into ravens. And even before he speaked, he heard a whirring over his head, and looking up, saw 7 coal-black ravens flying over the house. And then they couldn't revoke the curse. And the girl grew up strong, the daughter, more beautiful. But she overheard people saying that she was certainly beautiful, but she had the guilt of her 7 brothers rested on her head. This made her very sad. So she went to her parents to learn what had happened. And then she set out on a long journey to the world's end to redeem the boys. And all she took with her was a ring belonging to her parents, a loaf of bread to satisfy her hunger, some water, and a little stool for moments of weariness. First on her journey, she comes to the sun, but it was hot and fearful and burned up the little children. Then she ran to the moon, but that was cold and wicked looking. And she said, I smell man's flesh. So then, now remember the other girl had to make star shirts. So then she runs quickly and comes to the stars, which were friendly and kind to her, and allowed her to stop and rest. And each star was sitting upon his own little seat, except the morning star, Venus, who was standing up, and gave her a crooked bone and said, if you have not this bone, you cannot unlock the glass castle where your brothers are. And the girls wrapped up the bone. This is just full of images. The girl wrapped up the bone in her handkerchief and went on. But when she arrived at the glass castle, she discovered to her horror that she had lost the crooked bone. So she cut off the little finger and used that to unlock the door, made a sacrifice. You know, a dwarf came to the door, and she told him that she was seeking her 7 brothers. He replied, they're not at home, but that she should come in and sit down and wait. He then carried in food for the 7 ravens on the 7 dishes and in 7 cups. The girl ate a little bit off each dish and drank a little bit out of each cup. And in the last cup, she dropped the ring. And then the ravens come in, and they see that someone has eat their food, drank out of their cups. And the 7th, when sees the little ring roll out, recognized it was his parents, said, God grant our sisters here, and then we are saved. And then the maiden who stood at the door, behind the door, heard these words, came out, and immediately all the ravens received their human form again, embraced and kissed their sister, and they all went happily home together. Okay, well, those are the 2 dreams, or fairy tales. So we'll just discuss them as long as we can, and until we get to 45 minutes, because we definitely want to hear the commentary. But just the the idea of the 8 and the 7, there's 6 swans, 7 ravens, but in both stories there's an 8. In the first story, there is the 6 redeemed swan brothers and the king and the queen, and that equals 8. And then and in the 7 ravens and the sister equals 8. She doesn't get married as far as we know. And so those are at the end of the process. Now, so we're looking at what is the difference between a 7 and an 8, or a 3 versus it's the same problem as the 3 versus the 4. Now, in the step from 3 to 4, which is the 3 conscious functions and the 1 unconscious function, it's the assimilation of the 4th function, which is extremely difficult because it's completely unconscious. And it is not human, really. I mean, it's very, whenever you have to use your 4th function, you find you're possessed by a caveman, I mean, it really is that experience. You become angry, you become upset. It's very difficult for psychological evolution. But going from 7 to 8 is a variation, and it's now only a half step, so it's a little easier. So the 3 to 4 is dangerous and hard, and it's because you're encountering the unconscious completely. But the 7 to the 8 is a differentiation of that. So it's you're taking it in 2 steps. It's easier, 2 half steps. So 7 to 8 is a more differentiated approach to the problem of the inferior function. Okay, 7 is usually regarded as the number of an evolutionary process, the 7 planets of classical astrology. Okay, brings up the mystery that there are 7 archetypal base elements on which every human personality is built. Okay, everyone has Saturn, Mars, Moon, etc., but in different configurations. Now, these 7 archetypal energies. Now, sometime in life, we must become conscious and realize these basic elements. And the horoscope tells us the way to realization is always different for each person. So the 7 planets, becoming conscious of them, has to do with the evolution of a personality. Now, that it is said that when you are born and you go through, each archon throws something at you. You have to go through the 7 heavens on the way down to Earth. And each archon of the 7 planets takes something, puts a charge on you, and they own you. Okay, this is really the unconscious that comes up that we're not conscious of, those aspects of us that were unconscious. When Hermes went up to the highest heaven, when he came down, he took back from each archon that thing that they had put upon it. And when he gets down to the earth, he's fully conscious now of those 7 archetypal elements within it. And he's now back on the earth, and so it's a very interesting aspect here. There's 7 days of the week, 7 notes in the octave. But in each case, an octave is 8. Why is there only 7 notes? It is the 8th note is the return to the first, but at a higher level than in the first octave. It was interesting when Lee Holden says that as you do this, you start to experience life at a different frequency. That was a pretty interesting statement. I mean, you're the same person, but you're experiencing it at a different frequency. 7 has inner tension because it's divided into 3 and 4. And Jacob Burma said 7 is the tension between the Trinity, the higher aspect, and the 4 elements of the earth. So it's the tension between earth and heaven. we're going to have a wonderful, it's not we're going to talk about this time, but the star shirts that counteract the swan shirts, you know, is a really an image of the alchemical image of as above, so below. Okay, you know, heavens above, you know, to bring heaven, the heavens below, to make the earth as the heavens above, to make the heavens below, is really the aspect of the unus mundus. You know, it's the uniting of the two worlds, and this is to really live in the aspect of personality number two, and to be an individuated conscious being. We're going to find out a lot of what it means to be conscious in these two lectures, if I can get through them without too much digression. You know, now in the Trinity and the four elements of Earth, the eighth is the electric charge or lightning, which connects the two. So the four and the three call for the eighth, which is really the I thou. You know, it's the philosopher's stone. You know, it's that aspect that is missing, that needs to connect the pleroma and ego consciousness. You know, there's something missing. What is missing is the philosopher's stone, or the I thou between the two. So in days, there are 6 normal days, 1 day of rest, but they're all in time. But there's 1 day in eternity, and this 8th element, which is not in time, is not a time element. So 8 carries the meaning of the self like a 4, because it has an element which is not in as 1 foot that is in eternity. So the 8th is the totality aspect that steps out of the process of evolution. Now, the number 7 is the evolutionary number, the process of the evolution of the personality. But when you get to be an 8, you are in the eternal static state. Okay. Now, often nothing happens there, you know, and life is a becoming thing. So we don't ever really want, while we're alive, to stop becoming. I mean, 7 is always important to us. But I think this is somewhat like the image of the systole and diastole that Goethe speaks of. You know, we embrace the world with the 7, and then we sit back and we assimilate and integrate it with in the 8. You know, when we're introverted. You know, and this was the idea of the Buddha, who sat 7 days under the Bodhi tree and then stood up and looked at the place he sat for 7 days. You know, relating, integrating. It's the idea of the eternal static state and the tension of the process of evolution of the becoming thing within us, ever anew. You know, anything that has become there always has to be the birth of the renewal of birth all the time. Has to, you know, it's in Hasidism, you every day you awoke and you were worthy to create a new world that had never been existed before, like was done in the beginning, you know. And the Buddha says, yes, but it's not just every morning, it's every moment. So that there's always this aspect of the creation and then the assimilation of what has been created. Because we find out often that what comes up in images and things can just dissipate, and there needs to be a critical assimilation of these images. They need to come into us and be integrated. That's what you have logos for. You know, that's what we have the minds for, is to become conscious of that and then to make it part of us. And that's this critical integration. But it's very interesting that it's it is also aligned with introversion, the introverted state. So, and now in the Six Swans, the king is continually getting lost in the unconscious, in the woods, and he must buy his way out by marrying this negative great mother's daughter. The king the king in almost all fairy tales is the dominant principle of collective unconscious, which is often ill or in a difficult situation because it's become, it's static. There's no evolution. And it really is the lifting the curse, curing the enchantment in every fairy tale means that ego consciousness has become stuck. You know, in almost every dream that you have, you're stuck. You can't find your way out. You don't have any keys to the car. You don't know where everything's lost. Your friends are lost. You're lost. You know, the idea is the ego can't help you now. Well, this is the absolute, pretty much the story in every fairy tale. The ego can't help you now. So if the ego can't help you, who can? You know, the king's two favored sons always fail. The one that succeeds is the fool. And how does he succeed? By animal helpers, or by the help of nature, which is the help of Eros, which is the help of Qigong, and the help of this aligning with the feminine principle, you know, of nature. You know, this feminine energy, you know, is missing because ego consciousness is dry. It's sunlight. It's solar. It needs lunar energy. But it's interesting, in both of these fairy tales, the sun and the moon don't help. The only thing that helps is the stars, the neutral beings. You know, the moon is moody. The sun dries us out, you know. So, but the stars are these neutral beings. In this, it's very interesting that comes up. And it is comes up in, she quotes Mozart in The Magic Flute, you know, where he says, don't trust the sun and the moon too much. This is what the Queen of the Night says, come with me into the darkness of the night, you know. And, God called night the most faithful of his daughters, you know, that she does more for him in sleep than her brother day does for him when he's awake, you know. So there's this object. It's very interesting. The healing aspect of the star shirts. Well, anyway, the collective collective consciousness is always stuck or lost. I mean, at some point, it always hits a dead end, you know, because it's static. It no longer, and at that point, it's no longer can take the leading position. It can take the leading position to a certain extent until it gets to the end of the dead end road, you know, and it can no longer function appropriately. So anyway, he is lost in the woods. He's in the thick of the unconscious, but he can't find his way out. And now, then he meets the nodding old woman, who appears to be the curse of why he's lost. She's this evil form of the Great Mother, and she's the instigating figure in the Curse of the Swans. Now, this is really interesting, I think. I mean, let me tell you one other thing. We're going to read about this in a second, but what is wonderful about when a person writes a book in a feminine way, they don't have to get to the point right away. You know, Marie-Louise von Franz is a woman. Well, Jung did this too, but they just, if you can read some beautiful books and novels, I'm thinking of one, the one Daisetsu Suzuki wrote about Zen and Japanese culture, just spends hundreds of pages talking about just beautiful things, you know, and he's not in a hurry ever to get to the point, you know. when I was thinking of that song by Tom Petty about you know how it feels. You know, he says, "But let me get to the point. I'm gonna let's roll another joint." You know, I mean, we don't really. There is you don't have to get to the point. That's it's a wonderful aspect. But in now we're going to talk about this swing, the instigating figure, the mechanical nodding of the great mother, the nodding woman. She's in there just going like this, you know, and nodding. When you go in and you see skeletons, they're always nodding. And you go into a forbidden chamber and you find Maria, the cursed one, and she's swinging back and forth in a fiery swing, you know, and it's this basic archetypal idea that that the demonic has this mechanical swinging movement, which expresses a state of non-redemption. Okay, now she brings up some wonderful aspects. It's just this constant movement, you know, it just back and forth, but with no purpose. It's a meaningless movement. You know, it serves nothing. You know, and she says Sisyphus, you know, who you know escapes death twice, and so when he goes to Hades, Zeus makes him, he has a rock that he rolls up a hill, and once he gets to the top, it rolls back down, and he has to do it over and over again. And then the Danaides, they were 50 sisters who married 50 husbands, and all but one murdered their husband on the wedding night. And so they have to carry water in a seine or a perforated bowl, you know, and so they can't ever finish that task. And then there is Tantalus. Now, Tantalus is this was cursed, that when he was chained to some place where there was a tree right above him, and every time he reached for a fruit, it would go up out of his way, and then when he leaned down to get a drink from the water, it would recede. And that's where the word tantalizing comes from, Tantalus. So it's this meaningless eternal rhythm which nearly leads to the goal, but it's never reached. So this is this again, you know, it's the idea of we often have this, you know, you can go through a dream series and you know, it seems like you're progressing, and but are you really doing the work? I mean, the unconscious thinks you're doing something wrong, you're not getting it, and it goes to a certain point, and then boom, it starts all over again. You know, I mean, it's the idea that all this great big long buildup didn't get anywhere. You know, so this unredeemed repetitions is torturing even to the onlooker. Now, the mechanically, eternally repeating movements are unredeemed. The mother goddess has this dark aspect. Okay, now, how does she have this dark aspect? She has this dark aspect because of the devouring mother, the one who wants their little boy to be successful, but she doesn't want him to marry and go away from her. You know, so sometimes she just wants to keep him in the womb. You know, it's just this aspect of the mother goddess the negative mother goddesses can be the devouring mother, and then the negative anima is the one of addiction. You know, you can become spiritually moved, but not through an ascent, but it's through a descent into addiction, you know, of either drugs or alcohol or something like that. That's a spiritual transformation, but it's the wrong one, you know. So the unredeemed repetitions toward the constructive material appears, the patient seems to improve, one feels that he has a positive movement building up, but then it all crumbles. And at the decisive moment, there is no ego to assimilate the unconscious material. The ebb and flow, the building up, the decomposing or disintegrating follows a rhythmical process. And eventually these movements die down, people petrify, become dumb and stupid, and no inner processes seem to go on at all. Now this can sometimes come up in, well, it does come up in T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, that we live in a land of dry stones. There's no water of life here anymore. There's no renewal, there's no rebirth. We live in a desert. Now, this happens psychologically too. And it usually happens psychologically because we are, we live as, the Mephistopheles is the personification of ego consciousness, and he becomes our God. And he's one of these who has this perpetual movement, but nothing ever occurs. It's meaningless movement, meaningless activity. So it's a very interesting image. I mean that I just think is a lot of these things. We don't have to get to the point right away, but the nodding woman is a great image to keep in mind. Anyway, sometimes these archetypal images just don't get to the surface anymore, and this is attributed to the dark side of the Godhead, which is really the personification, I think, of ego consciousness. If the ego consciousness becomes the God, then it is you're going to be in a dead end. I mean, that's what the dreams and the fairy tales are all telling us. I mean, if we want to know what the dark side of the Godhead is, it's what is hell? Hell is a place of meaningless activity. Nothing ever happens there, other than you're just living in a place where there's no water. The Christians like to add fire to it, and they like to add fire to it because they think it all has to do with the feeling function. Everything has to be spiritual. Anything connected to the body or to the earth is evil, and so they have to add fire to it, but it is really just this place where there's no renewal. Now it's just the place of weak and lost, where weak and lost souls go. Lost souls. What's a lost soul? Well, a lost soul is the ego with no soul. I mean, it's the ego that never had this principle of uniting with of finding its star shirt. And we're going to find out too what the difference between a swan shirt is, which is being unconscious of affects within us. Okay, anyone who wears this animal shirt, they are driven by the passions, and they're not conscious of it. Now, one who has a star shirt, who brings the heavens below, now is conscious of the affects. And she's going to give some wonderful illustrations of that. But anyway, the king tries to save the children, but I'm going, time's flying here. This is unusual for the king to go after the children. Usually in most times, the children are missing. They're taken away by the wicked stepmother, but and hidden. But in this case, the king takes them and hides them. That does not happen very often. The dominant principle of collective consciousness is worn out, and the children represent the promise of new spirit, the new principle. this principle is removed into the unconscious by the worn out principle itself in order to preserve it. It knows that there's value to it. But the principle of consciousness in a human being or in the king is worn out. There's this need for renewal, and it's always a dangerous moment. Now what she's going to say is that he wants his cake and eats it too. What is really required here of the king is he fears the breakdown. He fears to give up and to be faced with nothing. It's either cowardice or ambition in the conscious ego tends to cling to the old ways, wants to prevent renewal. Here it doesn't happen directly because the children are removed. So he doesn't prevent the renewal, he just moves them to the unconscious. And she gives an example of a man who needs to have a breakdown, but instead he thinks he can find it in having a mistress, and he tries to avoid the process of renewal by having a mistress, and so he lives like a reckless robber 5 days a week, and then gets sentimental on the weekend, spends Saturday with his mistress, Sunday at the church, and then goes back to being this robber who needs a breakdown on the other 5 days. So this is sort of what the king is doing, because it will not work. But what was intended by the unconscious was a breakdown, a complete change of attitude, and not a compromise. No, you can't put the children in the unconscious and save them. This matter needs to be faced. So the stepmothers gets at the children anyway, just as if the king had not tried to save them. And she turns them into swans. At that point, in this collective situation, now this is so interesting to me. When the feminine principle has disappeared in its positive form, let me just mention it to you real quickly, because we don't have too much time, but is the aspect of you want to connect with the animus or the anima. And this really is the way you do it too. So you do active imaginations, and pretty soon out of the darkness, you start to differentiate this animus figure or the anima figure, and you starts to become more differentiated, and you can see them, and they sort of lose their swan shirts, and they haven't got star shirts yet, but they've lost their swan shirts. And then suddenly you forget 2 or 3, 4 days, and you come back, it's gone. Sometimes you have to start over, and so it's this aspect that she says that you can't do it just once. You have to do it every day, that if you stop, it's not a one-time thing. Well, we're going to also talk about the swans and the ravens. I don't think we have too much time here left, but let's see if we can finish with a bang. Didn't get too far here, but doing this once is not enough. Even if a man has realized what the anima is, he can't let her slip back into her feather garment and fly out the window. And the same is true of a woman. If we don't watch the animus or the anima every day, it will return back to its old bird form. Constant conscious effort. This is something Jeffrey Raff says too. Constant conscious effort is required to keep these inner entities in their these objects, these aspects of renewal, in their connection with human consciousness, because their tendency is to escape. like a dream, you know, if you don't write that dream down and assimilate it and integrate it on a piece of paper, it'll flow away. It's not a normal memory, you know. It's a very different kind of recollection, you know. And the only way that you can retain it in ego consciousness is to make it an ego consciousness memory, an ego consciousness recollection. And the only way you can do that is by writing it down, or I heard one person say they recite it. They recite it out loud 2 or 3 times, you know, and doing that does make it a conscious, if you don't have a way of writing it down, just to recite it. So it was really interesting, you know. I was taking these notes, and I just happened to wreck one of my drawings of this was from an active imagination. It was a ballerina hanging a painting on the wall. Just this ballerina was hanging a painting on the wall, you know. And you know, we're going to get to another part, and I want to just close with this. We'll pick up on some of this, but she's going to talk about where we almost got to it in culture, and this was in the era of courtly love and the era of alchemy. You know, we almost got to making the feminine principle the religion, you know, and the Meister Eckhart, all Meister Eckhart, the era of courtly love, the era of alchemy, all came up at the same time. They were all the redemptive renewal aspect. That if any one of these had become this naturally organic religion to replace the stiffening collective animus aspect of Christianity, it would have been just an amazing transformation, you know. But due to the technical rational development which began during the Renaissance, it all went away, you know. The anima in courtly love and the Grail legend was forced back into her swan garment. Alchemy was forced back into her swan garment, and Meister Eckhart was forced back into his swan garment. And I wonder, you know, I'd like to just, I don't know, I spent a lot of time studying the Grail legends, and, you know, Emma Young wrote it, and I just want to give you an aspect of this beautiful image. Let's see if I can copy this thing. I wonder if Gary, I'm not very good at playing videos, but I wonder if you could just play this video. I'm going to put it in the chat here. And this is courtly love. You know, there's this one aspect of courtly love, and it's just something I just love. You know, where the Grail appears as if covered by King Arthur's saying that no one can eat till adventure occurs, and the Grail appears covered by a veil, and then Gawain says, "I propose a quest, I propose a vow, that we all go forth to see the Grail now, but unveiled." And they do so, but when they set out the next morning, each thought it would be a disgrace to go forth in the group, and they had to go in the forest alone on their own path, because if they take someone else's path, wouldn't be the path of renewal, they'd go altogether astray. And where it all leads, you know, Joseph Campbell says, not even God knows. Could you play this little video? I put it in the chat, Gary. I don't know if you can play it, but it's just an aspect where we can hear Joseph Campbell talk about courtly love. It's just a beautiful.
Yeah, let's see if I can find where it popped up.
Yeah, it's in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on a second.
I could do it, but I never.
Oh, I got that. I just trying to, let's see.
I can never get it to play the sound.
So through the eyes, love attains the heart. For the eyes are the scouts of the heart. And the eyes go reconnoitering for what it would please the heart to possess. And when they are in full accord and firm, all three in one resolve, at that time perfect love is born from what the eyes have made welcome to the heart. For as all true loves know, love is perfect kindness. Which is born, there is no doubt, from the heart and the eyes.
Now that almost became the religion of the West.
Wow.
Where the commitment was to eros and to love and not to spirit. But it was lost because it consciousness. But I mean, people like Chrétien de Troyes, Wolfram von Eschenbach, you know, I mean, this could have been, along with the alchemical aspect, the religion of the West. It was snuffed out, you know, by rational thinking. Well, anyway, I think Gary, as the moderator, all we ask you to do is just go around the room. You don't have to say anything wise, but I'm going to mute here.
Well, first off, I do want to call to see if, you know, if anyone wants to chip in and, you know, say something initially before I go around. So if you got like something you want to say, just go ahead and pop right in.
You know, next time, Azine, I wonder, I didn't do it this time because I wasn't sure. I'd like you to present your little synopsis of the Spider Woman, maybe at the beginning of the session when you come.
What part?
Your synopsis is the further thoughts you had of the Spider Woman. Wonder if we could start the next session by that, you doing that. Yeah.
Well, Diane, would you like to go first?
I think I just have to digest this. I really made a lot of notes, and I don't really have anything to comment on right now.
That's no problem. Yeah, I have that same, you know, feeling sometimes. Elaine, would you have a comment?
Oh, I just think this book is so fascinating, and I need to read it again and again and again, because it's so difficult and deep to read, and so many nuggets in there. And I just was struck. I don't know if I was reading a little bit further than where we are right now, but it was talking about certainly in dreams that our thoughts are very chaotic and disorganized. And that is the case for me when I'm awake as well. And just the fact of noticing my thoughts is my goal really in life, is to be not only a good person, but attentive, just attentive. And this book has helped me a lot for that. And these two stories and the whole group and all the commentary. So thanks, guys. Thanks for helping me in my quest.
Great.
That was actually at the end of the 8th lecture, this wonderful image of that of putting star shirts on our anger, on our any affect we have, or let's say that someone wants us to do something very badly and we don't want to do it. She says there is a human way. If you can say it with your star shirt on as a human being, she says no other human being would ever object to what you say if you can state it as a human being with your star shirt on, and because of the way you state it, and she says it's not easy, but if you can, the whole idea is this great mystery of the star shirt and of being fully human, because we're not fully human. We are all wearing swan shirts. I mean, to wear a star shirt, and when you say something, and you have no, people can tell that there's no animosity, there's no gravity. I said, I am sorry, but this is not really for me, or so. I'm not good at it. I'll have a little. My wife always says that at the end of every sentence she hears, comma, stupid, period. And I said, no. She said, yes, that's what you do.
Well, one of the things that you had said a little bit earlier was that, one of the big problems is that, that things just dissipate before you really become fully conscious of it. And that, even that holding on to the image and the reflection and the integration, that's so difficult to do, especially in things like the act of imagination, because we get symbols that, are basically infinite, and, it's not easy to work with. Did you have something you wanted to say, Diana? I noticed you unmuted there for a second.
One thing we didn't talk about too is the suffering aspect. I mean, the girl who has to give up her little finger, is this suffering aspect to this to happen. And she's going to also talk about at the end of the 8th lecture. I didn't get to it. Is the aspect of hitting bottom. It's the only way we really learn thing is through having lost everything. She has this wonderful paragraph. I put it in the Facebook page. It was just beautiful.
Oh yeah. Annette, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just also wondering, I was very fascinated with the functions as well. And I heard that in one of the trainings that when you draw or when you write or dance, then you actually automatically express in your unconscious functions. So you automatically go to the 3rd or the 4th function. So I'm INFP, so I tend then to, my dreams are quite connect me with the sensate functions and with the animus. And equally in my drawings, I tend to go to that side because it is the other side in me. And the moment you go into your unconscious to bring out the other side, it kind of, and so I was wondering, do other people feel that too, or I don't know, what do you think?
I know, that for me, that was one of the things that I wanted to do with the dialoguing with paintings. And that was one of the, the reasons that I had the, don't look at the light, look at the shadows, don't look at what is there and interpret it, look at the shapes and all these things that the brain just isn't used to doing, to shut off the, the logos part and to get over to Eros. Any comments on what Annette said?
Say every dream, every fairy tale possesses all 4 functions in equal weights, and that's why it is just so magical to us. It seems so magical. It's because we're beholding all 4 functions. We're beholding a totality. We don't know it, but we can feel it. They come up and they have all. So they come up. We are seeing not brokenness now. We're seeing wholeness, in these images, and it's that's why they are so they beckon us.
Yeah.
So,
Boy,
Annette,
I
are you
really-
doing, oh, go ahead, Tim.
I really like what Annette just said. I've been doing art my whole life, and I've never thought about that the inferior function is the one that comes out. And just sort of scanning over the work I've done, that makes perfect sense to me.
I was just going to say, I think you are INFP too, aren't you?
Yes, right.
Yes, I can see that in your work. Really
Exactly.
see that. Yes. Yes.
So I just love that concept, and I'm going to spend some time thinking about that next time I'm making art.
Can you imagine doing art or music with just your three conscious functions? I mean, what would you get? It would be like I don't know. It's I guess what James Joyce called it'd either be commercial art or pornography.
Yeah, I think
it's not the divine. It doesn't possess the divine.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be using a sketchbook. I'd be using a spreadsheet or something.
Did you have any follow-on comments, Tim?
There's a couple of things that really poked out at me. One is this idea that the courtly love was a reaction against something that was happening in the culture. And I really feel like we are entering a period that is very much like the period between the 10th and 12th centuries, and also the end of the 19th century, when the society became so fixated on the masculine aspects and the cognitive functions. And it feels to me like I've also not thought of this before, that courtly love is a response to that, of opening up of the feminine principle. And I'm wondering if in our time that isn't expressed in pop music, because pop music is absolutely universal, and it cannot be extricated from people's lives. It's interesting to me that probably since my high school days, I haven't been all that into pop music. And that's probably because I had other avenues that were developing. My religious compulsion and my artistic work and just all these other alternatives. And so I kind of have to struggle a little bit to attach to pop music, but I'm just wondering if this isn't the collective way of responding to the masculinization of our culture. Another idea I was thinking about that really struck me was that transition between addiction and process. I think about the kind of work we all do has a cyclic nature to it. Every day we do the same thing over and over. And to me, that becomes the pattern of addiction unless there is movement. And as soon as there's movement, there's a kind of spiraling. And that is the difference between addiction and obsession. I am absolutely obsessed with the themes of my artwork, but it's because I think there's this spiraling movement.
Oh, I love that comment. The difference between the spiral and the circle and the repetition of things. That's just beautiful.
Can I just ask one little thing about courtly love? I also thought that Dr. Jung or Carl Jung also said that courtly love was kind of not very specific or not very personal. It's kind of a general admiration of the feminine, but it's not a personal, there's nothing personal in it.
Hmm.
Do you feel that?
Well, the idea really is, first of all, the great commitment was to the principle of the relatedness between eros and logos. It was the principle of relatedness. It came up in the aspect of courtly love. Now, courtly love was it was with the minne singers, with songs like you just heard. And it was just to experience that moment of the divine aspect of love, to bring divine into eros, make it. Now, the whole idea of how did courtly love come along? It came about from people living in authentic lives. I mean, people could see how corrupt the church was and how corrupt the monarchy was. And so they couldn't go to the church, they couldn't go to the law courts, they couldn't go to anywhere. And you know, people were forced to marry people they didn't want to marry. And this came up to out of organic the unconscious of the grail legend. You know, it comes, the grail legend and courtly love are inextricably linked. Parsifal and the Fisher King, and all of this is all of one piece, but it has to do with leading an authentic life. And also, it is not focused on logos, but it is focused on the union of which logos is masculine. It is focused not on eros or logos, but on the union of spirit and matter, you know, in the world. Heavens below is really what I think it really is. And it almost, they call it a cult, it really was a religion, you know, at one point.
I'm sorry, what was a religion?
They called the Grail legend a cult.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but that's a you know, a disparaging word for religion. You know? Religion, basically, there's two meanings for religion, and I was thinking about them today. You know, we just touched the surface on this. Be patient, because there's so much here. It's going to take us 3 or 4 sessions to get through these lectures, but they're worth it. You know, we don't want to rush through them. But the two definitions of religion, you know, one is to yoke one thing to another, and that's religio. Ligio is ligament, ligature that connects your knee and your knee is connects your lower leg and your upper leg with ligaments, with ropes or ligatures. And so what you're connecting is the nature body and the ego. Okay, that means religio, and it means to connect again, because they've been disconnected. You're broken. Well, there's the other aspect, and that is which Jung first mentions, that first definition, but then he later preferred the second, which is religere, and it means to take notice of things with great concentration. You know, so this really meant active imagination. Whenever an image came up, to give that image everything, be in service to that image that came from the unconscious. Religere, you know, to be its servant, and you are going to allow ego attention to be focused on the image from the depths until its critical functions have assimilated, eaten, and integrated and digested that image permanently into yourself. And this was the idea of alchemy's statement of relentless memory. Every image that came up needed to become part of their an icon in their own personal church, and they would never forget it.
Delia, would you like to make a comment?
Oh, yes, thank you. I like the image very much of the icons in a personal church. That's very beautiful, I think. And I can, yes, I have I noticed some things. Concerning the dreams, I noticed like how in my dreams that, and it surprised me a little bit, like how strong and how clear and real the feelings are in dreams. Like I get, I know, I feel pain, or I feel horror, or I feel good, and it's, I know, that surprises me a lot. And so that I noticed like in this, during like last few months. And on the text, I think I like the moment about the bone Venus gave to the girl, and that bone, and how von Franz, she explains that like there's nothing bad to love or to have a wish to love, but it's how to say, not a correct way to planify or to hook or to charm or to use some kind of magic, or like from ego perspective, like to control love, or I can't find the words exactly now, but and I like the phrase like to let go, just like how the problem could be solved, like letting go. And I think it was Latin word, deo consente, and I wasn't sure what it means, but it seems very
God willing, Dio concedente.
if the yeah, if the so yeah, it's I know it spoke to me a lot, and like to sacrifice maybe ego wish to control the outcome of in the matters of love. And I know maybe I can interpret it like not to play the passive role, like for as an animal figure sometimes, and not to get maybe in these kind of relationships. So I know I need some more time to think about it.
Yeah, maybe next time you could expound some on playing the passive role of the animus figure.
Yeah, that's in lecture 9. Is about
Yes.
the where a woman uses her charms as for ego purposes. You know, she uses it. She does it willingly. She makes love into a power to bring power to herself. You know, as a ego. So she uses her feminine charms to invite love, but only to use it to give herself power. You know, I mean, that was the aspect, and she's going to go through the whole idea is of this consciousness aspect of everything, and you know, including this wonderful gift of God called a depression. We're going to go through that. The depression, the raven, is a gift from God. You know, it's a gift that we don't want to accept. You know, and yet it now the reason I thought about that, Dahlia, is because you mentioned nightmares or dreams that you don't like. Okay, they're shocks, and that's because von Franz says somewhere that's because the unconscious is suffering because we don't pay attention to it. So it wants us to be in the same pain it is in by sending us a nightmare. And the idea of the depression is that synchronicity the synchronistic universe is trying to wake us up by its elfish games of fate, pulling the rug out from under us right at the wrong time, and because we are going on the path of power principle and not the one of evolution anymore, of renewal and rebirth.
Zin, do you have a comment?
Yes, I just started reading this fairy tale last night, so I'm just trying to get a hold of it, what's going on. I don't know if this, first of all, before going to the story, you were talking about religion, Craig, in Islamic and Persian culture, it's called din. So din or dan, den, it's just the same root with zen. And it means path, pathway, road. So it's really interesting that religion is about healing the wound. Like there's this wound of separation between body and soul, spiritual and physical. But in Islamic tradition, we see it as a pathway. It's a very Aryan mindset that humans are supposed to go higher, to reach to the heaven. So about the story, I'm trying to do some comparative between these two stories. I'm not sure if one of them is a version of another one, or how these two stories are related. But there's a lot of interesting points on comparison between these two stories. Like Swan is, to me, is a kind of stuckness in spirituality, or being content and feeling relaxed and something like that. While Raven is more not satisfied with the situation. It's a dark mood. It's I'm not okay like this state. And with Swan, when I was reading the story, I remember that once the first night that I stayed in Pacifica Lodge, I had this dream of swans, and it was such a beautiful dream. It was like a animation, and there was this beautiful swans swimming in this lake, pink and white, and just blazing objects and light. So to me, it was a very good omen that I'm at the right place, a spiritual place, and it was a kind of femininity to it. And years later, when I was reviewing the symbolism of swans, I realized that swans are also about being silent, gracefully silent. And if I had got the message, because things happened there to me because I couldn't hold my tongue. I saw things and I mentioned them and I shouldn't. So it was about, but ravens, they're loud, they're loud, and these two aspects I still haven't figured out what's going on, but I think it's two kind of position of stuckness. And I have a feeling that this story might be about the relation between animal and animus in a woman. Because as we know, a woman, a female form, has animus and then has animal inside the animus. So it's layers of animal and animus. So at some level, when you are first experiencing exploring the animal, it has a negative face, like negative, like crone, negative side of crone, witch, and later you find more positive aspects of animal. So I think the hero in this story, which is this little sister, might be a positive aspect of animal who's saving the animus or the experience of animus being possessed by the negative animal in the same person. So it's complicated, but I think there's a relationship between these two. I think it's about something inside a woman and saving animus inside a woman. I don't know what it is. And I also noticed that there's Apollonian aspects to this, because swan and raven and baptism. Baptism is also for Apollo. And this little girl is actually Artemis and Apollo are twins, right? They're sisters and brothers. And this little girl has features of Artemis. She goes to the jungle, to forest, and lives there for years, doesn't speak. And so it's very, it reminds me of Artemis. I don't know, these are like, and the bone, one thing that comes to my mind is bone is the essence of a person, because you live and you die, and what is left from you is your bones. And in bone collector archetype, we also have this, that you collect the bones from your ancestors, or you go back to your past and you get rid of a lot of stuff, but you bring the essence of the past to the future and you get integrated with it. So I think bone has something to do with the essence of femininity, especially because it's offered by Venus. I don't know, but I'm just starting. I don't know what is star flower. Is it related to the stars? Is it a special symbolism related to this flower? I don't know. And with nodding, it was very interesting. These little things that she pays attention to, that these movements, you see these movements all the time. If you go to an asylum, I worked for mental and physical disabled children for 6 years. You see a lot of these movements. You go there and they're hitting their head to the wall like this. So, and if you observe the old people, older than us, old people, they do a lot of these movements. Like it's really a dead end circle, you know, that they're trapped in it. It was really interesting that to observe that. So I'm just beginning to dig into the story, but it seems very interesting.
Well, the image of the layers of animus and then followed by anima, you know, I'd never thought about that.
Yeah,
You can hear all about the father's anima, the mother's animus, you know, or
yeah. They're like parallel mirrors that they create infinite images, you know.
Sure.
Because the father's anima tends to be negative, and the mother's animus tends to be negative too, you know.
At the beginning,
Yeah.
they're both very possessive and negative. The first faces are sheep and possessive and animalistic, primitive.
The raven is God's messenger, yet it is black, and it is an earthy bird. It's a bird of the earth, and it eats dead bodies. Now, the swan, the trumpeter swan at least, is all black underneath. Its skin is black, its feet are black, its bill is black, its eyes are black, and yet it's the whitest snow over it. So it's this bird of the air and the water and the underwater, and it contains opposites.
I think one of the stories should be a version of the other. One is original, the other is a version, because there's too much parallels, too many parallels. Like you have for swans, you have beds, and this girl goes and hide under a bed. And with the ravens, it's their plates and their cups. And the girl also relate to them, but putting a ring in the seventh cup. I don't know. There's a lot of parallels.
The mother, she mentions the mother of Asclepios, you know, the god of healing, was named, her name meant crow or raven. You know, it comes from the word corvid, you know.
Oh.
But anyway, just wait, to be patient, because you're gonna, this is a whole seminar here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. Kat, do you have a comment for us?
Yeah, well, nothing so esteemed really, but when I look at the story of the Six Swans, I automatically think of the Irish tale of the children of Lear, which the children were turned into the swan, but then sung with human voices, and that's actually quite a tragic tale as well. As for the stars, now I think of, like, you know, the star flowers. I think of like the Star of Bethlehem, which is an essence for the Dr. Bach rescue remedy, which is for shock and trauma. And like, I think of that plant, or that looks to me like sort of starry, because the star flowers obviously are various, but they are quite delicate, and they remind me of like hope and innocence and things like that. And the stars, I think, again, perhaps it's the shock of separation of the greater self, and we often look to stars for direction. There are cosmic roots. We often look at the stars. Man has always looked at the stars and wondered where we've come from and things like that. Also, in the tale of the ravens, now I can't help but think of thought and memory, you know, Odin's ravens. And I think of the fact that the girl eats from the cups, and, you know, drinks from the cups and has a bit from the plates. I think it's a form of sin eating, because it's because of that, and she drops a ring, that then the ravens are transformed.
Could you repeat that? It's a type of what type of eating?
Sin, S-I-N.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's about it, I'm afraid. So.
Fascinating images, though. That was good. Camelia, do you have a comment?
I haven't really read the stories yet. I didn't get to read as I had hoped. So I have several personal thoughts, but I probably think I would keep them to myself today, and then just enjoy all your others' images.
Great.
So thank you.
Sure. Angel?
Angelique, yeah.
Angelique, yeah. So this must be different than the other one then.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's like, is that the same one?
She's from Greece. She's in
right,
UK right now.
Our new member. Yeah, okay.
Yes. So are you talking to me then?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know how I managed not to have camera today, although I am in the UK. I thought I had, but then it doesn't seem to work. Or can you by any chance see me? I don't see me.
Oh, no, but we have your voice, so we're good.
Okay, it's all right then. Lots of things I was thinking. I think I'm always focusing on the elusives and its archetypal images a lot. So I was quite taken aback by the mechanical movements of the mother goddess. And so there is this the idea of the cyclic return and the eternal return, as Eliade calls it. And so it seems that it seems that this is a very strong archetypal movement, like the pendulum movement that the goddess does, the universe does. So as long, I guess, I was thinking that as long as we are unconscious, we are an undifferentiated part of that movement. So compulsively, we repeat it in our bodies and in our psyches, also in the way we relate to others, because we relate blindly through the projection, as Franz says. So this pendulum is actually Persephone's movement, the ascent and the descent, and it's a compulsory, I guess, thing for a woman. I mean, in my work, a woman without realizing, without being able to stop, continues doing these ups and downs in her way of relating. So she's either, if you like, the victim of rape, or the overmothered, overly overwhelmed daughter. And it seems that in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, this spell breaks for me when Hades, upon saying goodbye to Persephone, says, well, I'm not too bad of a husband for you, but you can be queen in both worlds. And I use that in my seminars because it's the rapist also becomes a reflection, the mirror of which we have been talking about, for Persephone, to also see an aspect of herself she was unable to see. And if you look at ancient depictions of amphora and ancient vases, you can see that she's very happy. There's lots of music in the underworld, lots of food. There's so many musical instruments. I was doing, as part of my research, I was collecting images of the underworld, and there's so many different ancient Greek musical instruments depicted in the amphorae. So she's not having such a bad time, but like in the Buddhist lore, the way reincarnation happens is unconscious until the initiate can break the spell, until they can go beyond liberation. And liberation is the moment that Franz, in my view, describes as this, this waking up, when you are not just an undifferentiated part of nature, when you have to go by day and night. It's actually this switch point, this crucial point in one's conscious awareness. It was used in the mysteries, where really you stop responding blindly to fate and you start having a destiny. I think Jung speaks in some parts in his work. I wish I could remember now, because this is actually one of the secrets of the mysteries. The initiates that were quite advanced were not suffering by fate. They were living their destiny. And this is depicted in the Buddhist lore, when a person who has been liberated and has become a bodhisattva chooses consciously to return in order to help others to become liberated. So this person is described in the Buddhist texts as they are not, they do not have to return anymore. They are not bound by the reincarnations, but they choose to, they have a choice, which shows that they live a destiny. They don't live the fate that is predestined as everybody else in the cycle of death and living. And if you look at the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there are actual instructions, very detailed, that people initiated in Tantric Buddhism should follow upon the moment of dying. We have similar in the Orphic lore, where we have found the the golden tablets, the golden Orphic tablets, where there are specific instructions what to do when you arrive in the underworld. So you have to be very careful not to take the, the left path, but really turn right and then drink from the water of remembrance, because remembrance, recollection, that is in Greek, recollecting the pieces is really part of the mysteries. They were having a collective experience at the mysteries, but they were coming out one step further in their own individuation, which is magical and quite difficult to understand in our days, because we all have our unique journeys, we have our individuation journeys, but we don't so vibrantly share with music, an incense, and this collective ecstatic shared experience. This is what we lack today to understand how they were individuating, but they were, and they were following very strict stages, very well described, very thoroughly, almost scientifically, I would dare say, prepared by the priests and the priestesses. So it's fascinating how through the fairy tale, I wish I knew more, and I had read it twice, because I'm always getting lost in the fairy tales scenarios. But it's very interesting how from this mechanical, obligatory kind of moving, the heroine really moves into a more conscious feminine way of living, if you like. So this to me, if you look at the villa, the Mystery in Pompeii, yes, and if you watch the different stages, well, 1,000 researchers have 1,000 meanings, but in my seminars, there are transformations the initiate, the female initiate goes through, and there is a mirror involved. There's also this purely embodied experience. The flagellation is where spirit comes down to the body. If we are to remember Jung's images, of the sacred union. If you remember, there's this image where the drops of the dew fall. So the spirit enters the body. Gerard Dorn's union.
It's the Unus Mundus, or there's three.
There are three unions.
Sacred marriages, yeah.
There are three secret marriages, yes. And it's the unio physicalis, if you like, when the spirit returns to the body. Anyways, let me not get into that. But yes, so it's, for me, it's a deep mystery how one can be part of nature while at the same time stops mechanically perpetuating, stops being a mechanical perpetuator of its compulsory cycles, but really participates in them, and becomes an avatar, if you like, thus changing the world. Very magical, but
it's all such a great mystery. The celebration of nature as the divine being, and yet this evolutionary process is a divine being, and I would say at the end of this, we're going to hit a lot of really important images, but just be patient, because it's she's very that's why I say she just keeps she's like Jung and Mysterium Conjunctionis. Everything reminds her of about something, but Anyway, well, thank you, everybody. Angelique, that was beautiful. And thank you, Gary and Aline and Annette and Dahlia and Azine and Tim and Camilla and Diane, Kat, and Dawn, I think is here, isn't she? Well, anyway, we'll see you all next time then. We'll just continue with this. Okay, bye guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
today. Bye.